Welcome to the Life of Hair. My name's James Atkinson. Thank you for joining to this week's episode. Now, this week's episode is going to be one of those episodes where I lay my laundry out on the line. I am not perfect by not a stretch of anyone's imagination, and I do not ever want anyone to watch my content and feel like I am some perfect hairdresser. Now, I'm going to name no names, but there's lots of Instagram and YouTube hairdressers out there that are only showing their finest work, their finest moments. They're not showing you those times where they do something that's just not right, or tonally off, or something's not right with it. And this particular episode, there's two things that I'm not 100% happy with. The client was happy and the client left happy, but you have those niggling doubts in the back of your mind where you think to yourself, I wish. So I'm going to talk to you about the technique, because the technique was fine, but my application of this technique was not as good as it should have been. And there was one big fatal flaw that I did in this technique, which I'm going to talk to you about, and something that I needed to then correct at the basin. And also there's another thing right at the end of the video that I'm also not all that thrilled with. Anyway, so I hope you enjoy my really honest insight into this particular hairdo, and you can take away some learning from me and hopefully not make the same mistakes in the future. If you want to take your life of hair education one step further, then please do join my Patreon down in the description. And if you want to get yourself a fantastic pair of scissors from Yowie Scissors, I am an affiliate of theirs, and there is a 10% discount down there, and you can get 10% discount site-wide. So please do treat yourself and invest in those hands of yours, because that is always worth it in my opinion. Thank you for watching, and I'll see you again next time for another episode of The Life. So here we have it. Very dark, very thick, beautiful hair. Really, really shiny. Long time since it's been coloured. I think I was probably the last one to colour this a really long time ago due to the unmentioned virus. And I think that, as you can see, look, it's really dark. It's like level 3. The hairs itself are very thick, very dense hairs, not coarse, shiny and smooth, but really thick hairs. Lots of hair on her head as well. And in the past, I've done various different techniques, highlights and then root stretches and etc. But in the particular instance of this time, I wanted to do a different technique. I wanted to try a different technique. So I've taken a horizontal section on a slight diagonal, to be fair, and I'm back combing up towards the root area. Now, I'm a big fan of just back combing once to ensure that we don't get too much padding at the root. That's very difficult to remove. But I'm going to talk about the problems that I caused myself here in just a second. Now, you can see this section is made up of lots of different colours. One of the requests was that it was a little lighter, not loads lighter, and she didn't want all the pieces the same lightness. So I'm using 2 different strengths of lightener, and you'll see that as I go through. I've got 2 different bowls. One's got a stronger lightener in it with 20 volume, and which is only in for the back at the darkest hair, so it's going to be on a little longer. And then for the lighter ends, I've got 1.8% peroxide with blue powder bleach. They've both got Olaplex in them, just to give that little bit of reassurance and condition, saving a bit of just some peace of mind for all of us while we leave on bleach on pre-lightened hair for longer than we should. Now you can see what I've done here is I've painted the top side of this section. I've lifted the section to expose the underneath, and then I've gone back through, and then I've applied lightener to the section. Now I'm going to tell you straight away, one of the big things that I've kind of done wrong here is that this particular section on such thick hair is too dense. There is too much hair in this section to create beautiful blending, seamless blending on both sides of the section. So you can see here I'm doing everything I can to distribute out any of the weight in the transition area at the top of the foil, but I know for a fact that in hindsight of doing this technique, I should have taken much smaller sections and maybe put a few more foils in to make up for that fact. So I did the back in exactly the same way as you just saw. So I'm not going to show you the back. It's pretty standard, 2 sections working up the back, leaving about 1 inch in between each section, taking the section, back combing it down to the root area and applying the product and making sure I saturate both sides. I then came into the front section. We wanted a little bit more colour around the face, kind of a money piece vibe, but not a really strong money piece. And so therefore, I'm doing the first 3/4 foils with a little bit of a weave. I'm not putting them back to back, and I'm not slicing all of the first couple of sections. So you've just seen me here with this very first front section. I've weaved that section, and I've done it as a traditional highlight. Saturated the hair very well. It's really important, guys, that when you're lifting hair, whether it be really dark or really light, that you saturate. It is the secret to good lift, clean lift, and consistent lift. So in the side here, I'm taking another diagonal section, diagonal backwards, and then I'm going to go through this section, take out a slice of hair. I'm then going to weave this section to create another highlight about 1 centimeter behind the first one, and that's therefore going to give me 2 foils on the front hairline to kind of emphasize the lightness closer to the scalp around the front. Now, in this particular instance, we're still lightening through some of these ends. So we've got our 6% at the root area, and then we will go through our ends with our 1.8%. You can see the brush colors changed to make sure that we are fully saturating our ends with that lighter developer, because obviously it's already been pre-light and we don't really want to risk breaking any of that hair if we can avoid it. And the 1.8% is incredibly gentle, especially when it's mixed with the Olaplex. Now, in this next section, we're going to go back to our teased slices. And as you can see through these side sections, our sections are a lot slimmer. And that made all the difference in the sides. The technique worked beautifully, it blended seamlessly, and happy days. But that's not what happened in the back. Now, in the back, obviously, as I mentioned, I just took my sections just slightly too thick. I didn't actually film me fixing the sections in the back because I was doing it in a rush. It was like, let's get this job done because I've got another client waiting. I didn't have time to start filming and getting all fancy. I just had to get those hard demarcations that I left in the back of her hair gone. So it was a case of just fix it as quickly as possible. I also, in some of the side sections, took slightly too thick a section on such thick, dense hair. I needed to fix those too with a bit of a root shadow. So that's how I fixed them. I got a colour that was pretty much exactly the same depth as the natural. I went through and did a root smudge on the sections that had the heavy demarcation. I processed it for about half the manufacturer's recommended processing time because that's all I had time for. But it was just enough colour deposit in there to alleviate any hard demarcation and allow the colour to grow through much more seamlessly. I've subsequently seen this lady and everything is all good. That was just enough, leaving that darker shade on than I wanted the end result to be. It came out at around a 6 because I processed it for around half the time. And it was that just enough depth into that demarcation just to transition it beautifully out. So that is a really hot tip, guys. If you are under the cosh and you really want to get rid of any kind of demarcation or lines, you can always drop the level that you're going to use, and then that way you will get more tonal deposit in a less space of time. I'm sure that that's probably not the absolute accurate science, but that's certainly the way that my eye perceives it. And it's just enough to get you out of that scrape. Because, look, let's be fair. I love doing work that is 10 out of 10. But not everything I do is 10 out of 10 because I'm human. Because I do things at the time that I thought was a good idea. I do things that aren't necessarily cognitively aware enough. Or actually, what I just did there, by the way, pick up that little triangle of hair, if anybody's wondering. That's the little triangle of hair from the side section, because we're working diagonally. You always leave a little triangle. Sometimes I leave that little triangle and I pick it up as I go by, going through the top section. Quite a nifty little trick if you want to make sure that you get some colour into that little triangle without putting a tiny little foil in. Back to the reality of just being a human and making mistakes and doing things with the greatest intentions at the time at which you were doing them. But obviously, like with any colour, you do it, it processes, you take it off, and sometimes you have to deal with the consequences of your misguided, pre-thoughts about how you were going to approach this particular colour. You may have taken slightly thicker sections than you wanted to unwittingly, which is what I did in this particular instance. So I think we now see a lot of amazing work on social media, and clients' expectations are like right through the roof. But the reality is that, we will still do things that we regret and we look back on and we just shake our head, or we're just not that happy with. For instance, at the end of this video, you're not going to see some beautiful, amazing blow dry. One, because the client didn't want it, and two, because I just wasn't that thrilled with it. And, I was feeling disheartened with my misjudgment of the texture of her hair and the thickness of her hair. And I've done her hair before. That's the really ridiculous thing on my behalf. So I wanted to still show you this video. I still wanted to give you the insights of me doing this video, because I wanted that transparency, that honesty, that I'm not perfect, and if you ever see me do something and you think is perfect, that's a percentage of the work that I carry out, and if you ever do something yourself and it's not perfect, there's two things to do. Here's my big recommendations. Two really important things that you should do. Acknowledge it with your client that you're not necessarily happy and you would love the opportunity to fix it. That is great customer service. That will ensure that client feels that you are passionate and you care about their hair and that you want to do the best job you possibly can. I fixed this right there and then. And the next thing you want to do is fix it as quickly as possible. If you can fix it right there and then, even if it means you're going to have to stay a bit later and work a bit harder, then that is my biggest recommendation, because it means that it won't take up another appointment in your column on another day where you can be earning money. So they're my two top tricks. If you do something that you're not 100% sure about, if you're not completely satisfied, those are the things that I would recommend you do. And I think, it's amazing how when you are completely transparent with a client about something not going quite right, they're very understanding. But if you're not transparent and they discover it themselves, well, they can feel very differently about it, as if you've hidden it from them and you're trying to cover up your mistakes. And you will have a client for life if they trust what you do, and you will lose clients faster than you can shake a stick at if the client starts to feel like you're shortchanging them or not necessarily caring about the product that you are producing. And of course, I'm sure all of you guys care immensely. And I know sometimes it's all about being confident enough to stand up and say, actually, I'm not that happy with that result. Can I fix it? The sooner you start owning it, the sooner you will reap the rewards. I can absolutely promise you. So back to the technique. You've watched me go through this technique, and obviously I'm just working with diagonal sections. I'm leaving reasonable spaces in between each of these sections. Some of the sections I'm slicing and teasing back to the root area to create that nice diffusion and blend. Others were those foils that were closer to hairline and pushed and teased a little bit on some of the sections just to create a slightly brighter, but not like a full-blown money piece effect on this particular instance. A soft money piece, if you will. I feel like quite a lot of the clients are wanting this slightly softer money piece effect at the moment. Maybe if it was sunnier here in the UK, people would want a big blonde streak in the front of the hair, but I'm seeing softness. I wanted to show you this particular foil, for instance, because as you can see, it's not lifting that well. That is the virgin hair with 20 volume. That has had nearly the full development time, and it's really not lifting. It's going very orangey. So what I did is I went back into each section. I double checked, but then I just reapplied with a slightly higher volume. I went back in with 30, and I did this to nearly every single section just to ensure that I could get the lift on the sections that I required, because I only wanted to get to like a level 9/8. And here's the finished result, and you know, it blends reasonably well, and there are light pieces in there from where we lifted through the ends. It's taken away a lot of the warmth that was there previously and it's created a much nicer look to it. And I'm giving you close-ups here so you can really see what happened, and you know, it does blend okay. And there's those few foils around the front. You know, I'm not 100% thrilled with kind of the blend of the foils at the front. I should have probably done a little root shadow on those as well to blend it away a little more. And also with the toner choices at the end here, I was left still with quite a lot of warmth. I wanted to use more of a mockery colour, but I didn't have a violet on a level 8 to tone this with. So I had to use an ash and a natural, an NA. And it's not exactly as I wanted it. It's not as rich as mocha as I wanted to achieve. But there's me hanging my heart on the line and showing you that I'm not 100% perfect, and not everything I do is absolutely knockout. And you know, I think there's lots of hair Instagrammers, YouTubers that do really need to start talking about, you know, the days where they have clients that don't go perfectly or don't go to plan or whatever. And I think it's just, yeah, need more transparency in the world, with especially with social media. It's time to own up, guys. So until next time, thank you for watching. I hope you enjoyed this episode, and I'll see you again very, very soon.